In this video, I'll share a quick modeling tip I learned about the ideal number of sides for cylindrical shapes. The key rule is to always use a number that's divisible by 2. I will now show you some example I made in Houdini to help explain the reasons for this guideline. There are 4 major reasons for this in 4 categories: LODs, UV stretch, UV symmetry, and for triangulation. Let's start with the LOD reason. Here you'll see 2 setups of the good number of sides on the left and the bad number of sides on the right. Let's start with the good version. If I go with the good version here that has 16 sides, if I did the LODs of this, it would be about 50% of that, which would be from 16 to 8, 8 to 4, which is good. The size of the mesh is always the same because as you can see, all the points that are left are always points of the versions before the same location. So the size of my mesh doesn't change even if I go further away, which is a good thing. If I tried with the bad number of sides for the same reason, for the size of the asset, if I start with 10, 10 yes is dividable by 2, which becomes 5, but if you notice here closely on the left side where this is, if you see this line, if I go back to the 10 and the 5 are already different size, so that means when I do my LODs, my mesh is shrinking down. So when you go backwards, it's not a good thing because it's going to annoy the eye of the person, the player, for the LOD shrinking down. And also 5 is not dividable by 2, it would be 2.5. The closest we can go is 3, but that also shrinks down again. The size keeps shrinking down, which is not a result we want for LODs because people will notice it. Also, it's not just for the reason of the size, but it's also for the reason of doing manual LODs. Here I can do the pattern selection of this edge and it skips the next ones and select the next one after that and do that all around. It works with the 10 version, but if I looked at this with the version of 5 side, if I started selection here, it's going to select the one next to it, which is not possible, so it's harder to make the LODs that way. With the good number of sides, it works all around for all the LODs I'm doing, from 16 to 8 to 4. It also helps tools like Simplygon, for example, that auto-generate LODs to have a good number of sides because then it has an easier time removing the good edges to keep the size of your mesh. So, and now for you, the UV stretch reason. If I go on the good version for number of sides, here with 16, I put the seam right here so the UVs go all around. If I switch for the next LODs, I'm still good there and it doesn't stretch. It keeps the faces square here, mostly as square as possible. So the stretching is minimum to none existent. But if I did that with the bad version, I have the seam at the same location, but then I switch and it's already starting to squish more all around. And the more I go this way, the more it's going to do it to a point that there's no stretching on some faces, more on others, and that's not a result we want because it's going to make it even more noticeable in the LODs. And the point of the LODs is that you don't notice it. You want to have clean visual that the people barely notice that we're switching for a lower version of the mesh. Also on the UV side, it's also for UV symmetry. With the good number of side, if I have it here, I have an edge also at the back. So it's easy and quick to do manual UV symmetry. But if I try to do that with the bad version, if here I have 5 sides, to do that I would actually have to add an extra edge to have a 6th side to be able to do it. Or else I would have, if I didn't do that, I would have to have it, my seam on the left here or on the right here, which will not have a symmetrical effect all around. So if that's what you're trying to do, symmetry, you wouldn't be able to do it with this version. And the last reason is for triangulation, which is the invisible edges on faces that have 4 or more sides. In this case, I created it by hand to showcase to you like all the 4 sides of it have invisible edge, and the pattern that we want to have better LOD created by Simplegon, or even for some engines for better rendering, is to have like this pattern that none of these invisible edges are parallel to each other. They keep doing like this triangle pattern all around. It works well for good numbers of sides, but for the bad number of sides, in this case here, it works well like most of it, but at some point, see, 2 of these are parallel, which is not a result we want for that. So in conclusion, the best number of side is a number that's divisible by 2. The reasons are for LODs. For the manual and auto-generated LODs, it makes it easier for both the person or the program. It also keeps the same mesh size between every LODs. For the UV side, it's keeps the seam at the same location, which would be impossible if we were not using a number divisible by 2. It's also easier to work for cylindrical symmetry if that's what you need to do. And for triangular purposes here, it's for some tools like Simplegon that auto-generate LODs, or it's to give better rendering result. And to help you out, good numbers are usually 4, 6, 8, 12, 16, 24, 32, and so on. That's it for the video.